All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the next installment of the SB 1383 Chat with CalRecycle. This webinar will concentrate on local education agencies and their implementation of the edible food recovery requirements. Thank you for joining us today. So many of you are the ones in charge of creating these new edible food recovery programs at your school sites. And you are California's valued partners as we work to innovate our way to a world where edible food goes to those who are hungry instead of to the landfill. So I want to give a big thank you to our speakers for taking the time to share with us their edible food recovery programs and the best management practices that they have learned along the way. CalRecycle is excited to facilitate these exciting conversations and opportunities for peer sharing. I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Darren, if you can go to the next slide. So today we'll be hearing from 4 panelists, and we will have time for Q&A after each pair of presentations. I will introduce the speakers before each of their respective presentations. And at the very end of the webinar, we will have a few minutes to have a roundtable discussion between our panelists. So make sure that if you have any questions during the webinar, you use the Q&A function rather than the chat. Any questions that we do not get to, we will be following up on. You can use the chat function, but it's not monitored by CalRecycle staff. So that should be limited to informal communication. This webinar is recorded and will be posted to CalRecycle's YouTube channel. And when it becomes available, we will be sending out an announcement on our listserv. So you can see the instructions here for our Q&A session. We will have these up when we get to the Q&A session. But please make sure that you type your question or a summary of your question into the Q&A function and not in the chat function. Questions should focus on SB 1383 implementation only, and CalRecycle will go through the questions on a first come, first served basis. We'll aim to get to as many different people as possible, but if we do not get to you, you can email us at slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov so that we can follow up with you on your question. When it is your turn to ask your question, we will ask that you unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation before asking your question. And we will not be using the raise hand function today. So we will now start our webinar. And our first speaker today is going to be Mallory McGough. Mallory is the Project and Operations Manager for the Go Green Initiative, a nonprofit based in the Bay Area. And in her role, Mallory supports school districts to reduce waste, conserve natural resources, and improve environmental health at schools. Mallory, go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. As Mallory said, I work for the Go Green Initiative, which supports school districts to reduce waste, among other things. So today I'm going to be giving a little bit of a brief introduction, 101 to how schools can get the ball rolling with edible food recovery, and sort of some of our tips for making this run smoothly across the district and be a practice that's sustained year over year. Next slide, please. All right, so here's some of the high points that I'll be talking about today. As we know, SB 1383 requires schools to recover and donate edible food beginning in January. I'll talk about how the nutrition director can be involved in centralizing implementation across schools, and also how school green teams, students and staff can really ensure this is happening in action and working the best for their individual school community. I'll also be talking about food share as a great place to start, ahead of food donation, and some resources available to help you guys implement. Next slide, please. I want to start by zooming out a little bit and talking about, why we're here. And we're here because food waste is a big issue. And schools have a really big opportunity with edible food recovery. On the screen, you'll see some data collected from a waste audit we did with a Bay Area school and Stop Waste, our local agency. And this high school's waste sample showed that 76% of their lunch waste was edible food. And 63% of that sample was edible food that could have been shared on a share table. So that's just a tremendous opportunity to reduce waste, reduce the impact on the environment, and benefit students in the school community. Next slide. All right. So just to encapsulate this, again, beginning in January 2024, local education agencies with on-site food facilities are required to recover and donate the maximum amount of edible food. This is the second part of SB 1383, with the first part being the requirement to reduce the generation of organic waste and divert it from the landfill. Schools are meant to be compliant with that first part as of January 1st, 2022. So they're meant to be commercially composting or composting on site and reducing the generation of waste. And now comes in that edible food recovery and donation portion. And SB 1383, is the most recent in a series of legislation that organizations and individuals need to comply with to reduce their waste and impact on the environment. Next slide. So when we talk about SB 1383 compliance in school districts, that can require a lot of changes for the district. It can require changes to their contracts with their waste haulers or vendors, for example. Can require them to need new equipment or policy on their school board books. It can require some changes to job descriptions, food handling procedures, and more. So there's a lot of elements and there's a lot of moving parts to this, and that's why we at the Go Green Initiative really recommend that the district office be involved in centralizing and managing compliance efforts, because these are the folks that are going to have access to make changes to these types of things. Contracts, equipment, job descriptions are probably outside the job description or access of individual folks at the school, like the principal or custodians, for example. Next slide. So a little bit of why to involve the district office and how we at the Go Green Initiative recommend forming a district office green team that's composed of senior administrators who meet regularly to discuss the environmental initiatives in school and, importantly, SB 1383 compliance. So these folks can achieve accountability from all of their school sites and make this a practice that's happening year over year and doesn't fall off when that one amazing teacher champion leaves the school, for example. So the district office can make this part of the culture of the organization and an expectation that's happening year over year. They can also facilitate those operational needs I was discussing, like equipment, training, labor relationships, and more. Next, please. So who can serve on that district office greening team? The members on the screen you'll see right now are members that we recommend for a complete district office green team, but the folks circled in green are the ones who might have a particular interest in edible food recovery. And those are going to be the school business officer, who is often the assistant superintendent of business services. That person can make changes to the organization's contracts, vendors, and budget. Also, the assistant superintendent of instruction. That person is in charge of all of the educational leadership in the district. So that assistant superintendent can send out messages to all of the principals and vice principals and let them know about the requirements for compliance with SB 1383 and food recovery, and they can achieve accountability from each school site. Third is the nutrition director. That's obviously going to be an MVP in edible food recovery. The nutrition director can do things like make changes to the food handling procedures. They can ensure compliance is happening in the kitchen, and they can get the ball rolling on the donation agreement and be the point person for that. And lastly, HR might be interested in this initiative as well, especially if there's going to be changes to job descriptions, or if labor unions are going to be implicated in some way, they might want to be updated on this program. So, we recommend getting these folks in a room or a Zoom room, on a monthly basis to connect and make sure they're sharing what's going on and supporting each other. Next slide. Okay, and another group of key stakeholders in making this a success will be the school site green team. So if the district office is managing and centralizing this program, the schools and the folks on the ground there are the ones that are going to bring it to life. So we recommend each school have a formalized designated school site green team that manages their environmental work and very specifically SB 1383 compliance. With the districts we work with, we form green teams at each school every year and retrain them every year. And schools are directed to form these teams by their assistant superintendent of instruction. So these teams are students and staff working collaboratively to bring the district's initiative to their school community, educate all of their students about food recovery, why we're doing it, and how to engage properly, and also identify needs that they have for training and equipment and elevate those to their district. Next slide. This slide shows the members that can be involved in the school green team. And we recommend at least one of each of these stakeholders, one administrator, teacher, custodian, and student. We found that these perspectives are really important in making sure that this is a program that works for everyone and everyone's perspective is considered. So the administrator is the head and organizer of the green team. They reestablish the team each year at the direction of their boss, the assistant superintendent of instruction. And the other members of the team provide their perspective and can be that hands-on support to manage the food share table, provide peer mentorship and spread the word about the programs. Next slide. All right. So, now to the main part, which is what does edible food recovery in K-12 actually look like on the ground? I'm going to be talking about sort of two components to this. One is food share, which is when we're recovering edible food and sharing it within the school to other students. And the other is food donation, when we're recovering the food and sharing it outside of the school. So food donation is required by SB 1383. It's going to need to involve the district and the nutrition director to form those written agreements and keep records. Food share, on the other hand, is not necessarily required, but can be a really great facilitator to reduce that edible food waste, recover food, and get it back into the hands of students. Next slide. Yeah, so I'll start with the food share table. A food share table is a location where students can return their unopened, unbitten items from their school lunch that they don't want. And those items can be taken by other students to eat at lunch or keep for a snack. And remaining items at the end of lunch may be able to be reserved on another day by the cafeteria. Often those room temperature food items can be sanitized and reserved, and even hot and cold items can often be sanitized and reserved depending on the guidance of your local health agency. Next slide. All right, so I recommend food sharing as a place to get started with edible food recovery for a few reasons. One is that it's relatively simple to initiate in a lot of cases. Food share can start with the basics. It can be really any table, bin, cart, any location that's available at your school that can be designated for students to leave their items if you don't want and others to take. Normally, it would only need the approval of the school administrator. And a lot of schools find that their students are already practicing food share informally. They may already have a location in the cafeteria that they're leaving their food items and sort of sharing, at their own tables. So there's a real opportunity to just spread the word and formalize this and make this something that's better known. Food share is also safe and authorized. So the California Department of Education authorizes the use of food share tables to reduce waste. USDA also provides guidance. So this is a program that is well known, and there's a lot of participation in, and schools across the state are doing every day. And lastly, food share is beneficial to students and ensures that all students have enough of what they like to eat, promotes positive values, environmental literacy, and it's also very popular. Students tend to really like the opportunity to grab one more of their favorite snack. Next slide. So with food share, a big item will be gaining student participation. And that can be done through just creating awareness campaigns, making announcements about what food share is and why we're doing it, but also importantly connecting to the bigger picture. Some schools find that, especially in older grades, high school, there can be a little bit of a stigma in participating in food share. Students might feel that it could indicate food insecurity, and so they might be more hesitant to participate in that. So by connecting to the big picture of this is a collective action that we're doing together for our planet to reduce waste and for our climate, that can really put people at ease and make this feel like something we're all doing together, and there's no individual feeling of shame in that. Next slide. All right, so moving on to food donation. Again, that's going to be when we're recovering the edible food and donating it outside of the school walls. And that's going to really need to involve the nutrition director or the district office. Again, local education agencies with those on-site facilities are required starting in January to donate the maximum amount of edible food. And they're also required to have a written agreement with a recovery organization that has a regular donation schedule. And they're required to keep records of that as well. Next slide. So here's just those 3 steps to getting that started. The first is going to be for the nutrition director to establish a relationship with a recovery organization. That can be food banks, shelters, nonprofit organizations that serve food. There's also plenty of organizations that serve as facilitators of that, transporting food. So whatever is available and works for that individual district. And then they'll need to make a written agreement. And CalRecycle has a template for that can be used. This is just to document that this food donation is happening and make sure both parties are in alignment about that. And then the school will also need to keep records of the types of food, frequency, quantity, and recipients. There's sort of an example of what that record keeping would look like on the top right of the screen. And that's a CalRecycle tool available on their website as well. That's linked here on this slide, and I'll share a master link to those resources at the end. Next slide. So I want to touch a little bit on some of the positive outcomes of food donation for schools and districts. Obviously, there's the opportunity to have a positive social impact where a negative environmental impact once existed. Instead of sending all of this edible food to the landfill, we're getting it into the hands of someone who can use it. It's the opportunity to strengthen community partnerships as well. But there's also benefits that I know a lot of folks might not think of off the top of their head. One is the opportunity to save on waste hauling. Food waste is bulky, it's heavy. It often makes up half, maybe even more of your school's waste. So reducing that is the opportunity to reduce on the cost of your hauling and also reduce burdens on your custodial staff. Also, creating an inventory of your donations can help facilitate better purchasing. By having that written record every week of what items were donated because they were underutilized or underconsumed, that can be a type of data collection that's really useful to the nutrition services department. Next slide. And the last I want to touch on is health and food safety. This is a question that comes up a lot, if this is safe or if there's concerns with that. And the key here is to really involve the local health agency and comply with local health codes. So schools across the state are doing this every day. And as long as it's done responsibly and in compliance with those health codes, it's absolutely something that's very beneficial to schools, to students. And as far as food donation, the district will be able to involve that local health agency in developing guidelines, and the recovery organization will also be able to provide their needs and their guidance in partnership. And with food share tables, again, those local health codes will be important. I know in Alameda County, schools can reserve their room temperature items on a next day after being sanitized, and they can also reserve hot and cold items, certain hot and cold items, if they're out of their temperature zone for less than 2 hours, but that's going to depend on your local guidance. Next slide. So just to sum up quickly, our recommendation is to definitely, involve a district green team in this who can really facilitate those operational needs and make this something that is done year over year at every school in the district. The nutrition director is going to be a key player, but also school state green teams, school staff and students have a key role to play in making this, something that's actually in action and works for the specific school community. Food share and donation have positive impacts for students, staff, and the community. So, hopefully this can be something that's not just a have to, but a want to. And next slide. So here's a link to some of the resources I was talking about. This is a Google site from the Go Green Initiative with a bunch of resources for schools, districts, for complying with SB 1383, both the waste reduction and the food recovery part. I'll also share that link in the chat. But yeah, I hope that you guys will feel free to use that and contact me with any questions. Thanks so much, and I'll pass the mic.
Thanks so much, Mallory. Great presentation. So just as a reminder, before we move on to the next panelist, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A feature. The questions put in the chat will not be answered live today. So our next panelist today will be Vu. Vu is the Food to Share Food Recovery and Distribution Program Manager at Fresno Metro Ministry. 7 years ago, they launched their first recovery, and Vu will be speaking on Fresno Unified School District and Central Unified School District. Thank you, Vu.
Thank you, Mallory. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So I will be coming from the recovery part of this SB 1383. We are currently taking the lead on food recovery with our school district here. And first, I want to show a little clip of an overview of the recovery process by our district and our collaborations together. Next slide. I don't think the volume is on. Can we get the volume?
Darren, unfortunately, we can't hear this video. Can we try something different? Otherwise, we might need to move on.
Sorry about that. I don't think I did anything different. I can hear it on my end.
Okay, well then we'll make sure to share the video in the chat, but otherwise let's go ahead and move to the next slide, I think. Thanks, Taryn.
Okay, so I think there's one before that. I have the Emory. We're going to move on to the next step, which is it's on how we connect with the district. So 7 years ago, we came to find out that, you know, there was a lot of school food that are being wasted. And so we connect with their district here. And we start our partnership. Then we work closely with our nutrition center, as you can see on the slide there. So the process starts from nutrition center once we have an MOU with our districts. And then from there, they're providing the onboard, provide instructions on how the kitchen staff can collect the food and what is allowed to collect, and of course being recovered by us. And then from there, we as a recovery organizations, we had to do our outreach to our individual schools. And from there, the interest is if a principal or the school have an interest in saving the food, then we'll go back and we connect with the nutrition center and we're on board them, and then we'll set them on a regular pickup, depending on how much is needed. It could be 3 days a week, 2 days a week. So that's the process. And down there, the kitchen will start collecting food, you know. And how do we collect the food? We work with the kitchen and also the NTA, and we also have student helper who volunteers to help collect all this food and store away in the walk-in and ready for the scheduled pickup. And then our driver will pick up the food, and from there we deliver it to our receiver organizations, who are organizations such as our church pantries, our after school program that they can give it away with their parents and take home with the kids. And so those are, and from the receiver part of the side, because we're like in the middle person, we let our receiver who distribute the food, let them know that the food will be eaten within 1 or 2 days, just because all our food are prepared, already prepacked. Go ahead, the next slide. And these are examples of food that we pick up. You know, as you can see, they're completely good edible conditions that we we're able to rescue and share that with our needy community. In the middle of that page where it says the little paper right there is how we track each pound that we recover. And since we launched in 2016, we have recovered over 9 million pounds of food that could have been waste. Go ahead, next slide. And these are examples of our van that we use to pick up the recovery. This is locations from our Central Unified and Fresno Unified warehouse. We do have hot bags that you see in the little corner and the igloo to store all those hot meals, because we do have to keep it within the required amount of time from when it's heated until it's being served. So that's why we have the igloo there to store the meals. And our schedule with these special handling meals they need to be handled in a special way, not just any food that you have to just pick up and and then can be stored away. So all our school food that we recovered are picked up within those hours and delivered at the same day and given away. So all the are scheduled according to our partners who are receiving the food according to their need, and when the food giveaway will be held on that day. Go ahead, the next slide. So our partnership at the recovery sites to help our food recovery organizations understand and makes it easier is that we work really closely with our office staff from each school site. They are the one that will allow you, or let you go into the schools and also let you out, because every school does have a lock and every, offense. And so to get into the school, we have to get through the office. Because the custodians also will be, your best friend if you're recovering food, because they're the staff that will actually open the gate for you and let you out, and also tell you where the food is located, or open the actual walk-in for you. So become best friends with your custodian. The next person there is your security guard. And here we have a lot of security guard at our schools. Get to know them. They are your key to get into the school as well. And then our kitchen staff, we as the recovery organizations, we had to really collaborate with the kitchen staff, because we had to coordinate how the food are being recovered, put away, and coordinate a specific time for our drivers to pick up those foods, so we don't lose time, or we don't, because dealing with this type of meals, it's really crucial when it comes to meeting our time within the 4 hours window. Let's see, depending on each site, some school might need a couple of days pickup. For example, maybe we schedule Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so the food doesn't stay too long and at the school, because we need to move them because of sensitive time. And then someone there who doesn't have as much food, we pick up every 2 days, which is like Tuesday and Thursday. So this way we are able to move the food in time and in an edible condition, so that way it doesn't just end up in the trash. So how do we separate? So, as you see in the picture, the food comes in dry crackers. We collect those from the after school programs, or whenever they serve any crackers that goes with their meals that day. We actually provide bins and separate by dry goods, juice, if there's any perishables. And so that way we keep everything from getting all mixed and get soggy, and of course, prevent that from just tossing it out. And with our collaborations, we're able to set this up with the kitchen staff, providing the bins. So we do a lot on our side just to prevent the whole recovery from, at the end of the day, from just end up being thrown out. Go ahead, the next slide. Okay, I think we missed a slide, but what type of food are we recovering? So the type of food that we rescue at our school sites are hot meals, such as pizza, chicken sandwich. Cold meals would be like turkey ham sandwich, PB&J sandwich, and salad such. And also pre-packaged individual little carrots packets, whether it fruits, apple slice, there you go. And then of course, we also need the following equipments to handle how these food are being recovered. Due to the time sensitive, and within that 4 hours, we do have hot bags in each our van. We have cooler, igloos, ice pack. Those are all provided for our drivers to collect to rescue milk, all the salad, cold, anything that's cold, sandwiches and salads and perishables. And then our storage food, we prepare food. The prepared food had to be transported in a controlled temperature. So all our vans, as you see in the picture, are all insulated. So that way in these hot summer months, we can keep the temperature while it's transporting to our delivery locations. And so, you know, you see in the van that inside it's all insulated. Okay, next slide. So what you should expect as a recovery organization. The last 7 years, we have learned a lot, and so, you know, we established a lot of protocols and procedures for how to recover food. And it really depends on your organizations. But this is like how our guidelines, and it has been working for us. And of course, we had to meet regulations and all that. So all the food that we recover from the student, we're not only recovering what's not served, but also what the student doesn't want. And so by providing, I hope we can play that video at the end or something, just so, or you guys get to see it, because then you'll see how we provide the crates, and then they can, you know, put the food in there and collect from the kids who doesn't want to eat those certain vegetables or fruit. And from there, our drivers have to sort all those fruit, just because, you know, our kids, they love that once they understand the program of recovering this food, instead of let it go to waste, and they want to feed, you know, someone that's hungry out there, they want to donate everything, even it's half eaten, you know, a pack of grapes or half a pizza or something. But so our driver do have to sort through all those, and to make sure that everything is you know, not shared halfway. Let's see, we do let, or because of the sensitive time of the prepackaged food, like such as cantaloupe, any fruit that's been cut and being, you know, from sending to the school and us picking up, those time we're losing time. So when we work with our receiver, which is our partners who give out those food, we let them know that those food only lasts so much, only has so much time and lasts so many days. And so those are, we determine, and we see that between 1 and 3 days, depending on what type of food or veggies we give it to them, they had to be eaten before it goes bad. The other thing that we come to find out is our most unliked and healthy vegetables is the jicama. We struggle a lot through that, because a lot of people in our community doesn't know where it is, you know, and they don't know what to do with it. But we, as our recovery organizations, is able to provide information on certain fruit that are not familiar to everyone, and recipes on how you can utilize those fruit and vegetables that they never seen before. So this is one way that we can help, you know, rescue this food and just let it go to waste. And so we provide a lot as we deliver this food to our receivers, our partners, and the community to share this food. We provide recipes, we drop off recipes. In our organizations, we also provide cooking demos, so we show them what to do with certain type of food that they've never seen before. And so moving on to the next point, our drivers, you know, we do require that all our drivers, and we certify all our drivers for food safe handling. And we provide gloves and sorting, you know, crates, hot bags, igloos, and everything had to be washed daily, depending on if, you know, they spill some milk on a crate or something, but they had to wash it and sanitize. And this is to prevent from, you know, any contaminations or growing mold, or just, you know, keeping everything clean. This is all I have, because I had that video that was gonna take like couple of minutes to play.
Hi, Lou. Thank you so much. I've been working with our staff in the background, and unfortunately, even though we were able to play the video during our practice run, it doesn't seem to be working
Okay.
right now. Sorry.
That's okay, because hopefully we can air that somewhere. So
Yes, yeah, if we could get that link, we'd love to be able to put it in the chat to share with folks, because it sounds like it would be a great opportunity for them to find out more about the program. I
yeah, and for that, I did put some challenges that we go through just in case. Maybe I should probably just go really quick over that. Over the years, we have faced a few challenges just to, you know, as a receiver, a recovery part of the organizations we have. So here we have some challenges that we work with the school, and a few of these are collaborating with our school district's kitchen supervisor. Only some of them we discovered that, you know, not everybody's have the same what you call it, agree, or I don't know, see the same way as our food recovery. It is a lot of work. We add a lot of work as part of taking time from our kitchen staff. So, you know, as they are managing the kitchen staff, we have a hard time working with them when some of them are having don't see it the same way as, you know, the program, the SB 1383. What we discovered also is that not all the kitchen staff do receive, you know, accurate informations. And so everybody doesn't really know, you know, what to do, what to give us, what to collect for us, and what not to give us. I did put one point there that we do have that, you know, we found out like it's since SB 1383 is so new to everyone and we're all learning this together, it is not a priority yet, but we want them to know that we understand, you know, their main focus is to provide healthy food to our students. And so we're just, as in recovery organizations, we just have to continue collaborate and continue to work with them so we can rescue all this food instead of let it go to the, you know, the landfill. We found out there's a lot of needs in our community, especially these days. We have people asking food, you know, all the time, and it's just hard to see when, you know, we're not able to save certain schools or so much to go to the trash bin. So we do, you know, come to a couple of challenges here that we're still working, and this is every 3 to 6 months we had to just continue, you know, reconnect and continue to work with our districts, our supervisors, and our kitchens, letting them know that we are here and we're still doing, and this is what we're taking. Always trying to get updates from the district because they're you know, everything's changing all the time. So, but what we find out is that if we're able to put once we find out that we can put a school on a route for 3 days of pickup, it's easier for us to make it there on time and meet the sensitive time of recovering those food instead of, you know, being on call every day. And some days we have over, you know, like 30 school calling us, and there's only like 4 drivers out there on the road where it's hard for us to grab all those food. And so there's still a lot going away. So we're trying to put everybody on the route so we know that we can just, you know, make it there on time. And those are some struggles that we go through. Also, we are losing a lot of time as we're trying to get into the schools, coming out of the schools. Sometimes we get to the school, even though after so much coordination we still get to the school and the walk-in where they store the food, it's still locked, and at that time we just have to go the next day. So all those are challenges that we're facing. We work with traffic, we work every day trying to make it better, and hopefully we can, if anybody have any questions, feel free to ask me. If I can help, we can probably I'll do my best. And so that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Boo. So we have a couple minutes now to go ahead and ask questions of our two first presenters. As a reminder, any questions that you have, please go ahead and use the question and answer feature. We are not monitoring questions put into the chat. So here are the directions for asking questions. And as a reminder, we will go ahead and read off your question, ask you to unmute yourself. And when you do that, please state your name and affiliation before you ask your question. So I'll go ahead and pass off. Katie?
Yeah, so when we call your name, please go ahead and unmute and state your name and affiliation, and then go ahead and ask your question. Looks like we've got a good number of questions coming in already. The first one is from Melissa Herrera. Melissa, you should be able to unmute now and ask your question.
Hi, my name's Melissa. Do you have any type of understanding as to what the protocols are for schools that vend from other sites?
Thanks, Melissa. Can you verify who you're asking that question of? Is this for CalRecycle?
I think anyone that may have any knowledge about all of this.
Sure.
It's all new to all of us, so.
Of course, I can go ahead and start off the conversation. So SB 1383 does require anybody that meets that commercial edible food generator definition to donate all of their edible food. So if you're vending your meals, I assume you're using what we would consider a food service provider. And a food service provider does meet the definition of a commercial edible food generator. And they were actually part of our tier 1 and required to start donating their edible food starting January 1 of 2022. So if your food service provider has excess edible food, they would need that's safe for human consumption, they would need to donate that.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. And just as an FYI, we are able to enable participants to unmute one time. If you remute, then we have to go back and enable that again. So it's easiest for us if you're able to remain unmuted. We'll do our best to keep up though. Up next, I have a question from Andrea Richards. Andrea, please unmute, state your name and affiliation, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi there. My name is Andrea Richards. I'm the food rescue manager at the food bank in San Luis Obispo. And I'm actually currently working with a nutrition director at one of our local school districts to pilot a school food rescue program. And I've found that she is pretty maxed for capacity as far as her time goes. So my question is to CalRecycle staff. I'm wondering if there has been any work on the back end for messaging or collaborating with schools to prepare them for the additional work that'll be required in like creating a donation program.
Hi, thanks so much, Andrea. This is Mallory Burden from CalRecycle. So we're very lucky right now to have 8 climate fellows that are working with us. And we are able to task them with working with these local education agencies to help them with their organics diversion, but also with their edible food recovery programs. That process is underway right now, but I can recommend that it's an awesome opportunity to go ahead and try to apply to get fellows for that school, either through the Climate Fellow program or through the AmeriCorps program. It can be a great help for overtaxed programs.
Hey, Andrew, I'll just add, I think to your point, Andrew, we've done a lot of messaging out to school districts, the statewide associations like California School Board, et cetera. Probably that's something we should consider if maybe we need to message out again. If you're hearing folks are kind of saying, I've never even heard of this, or it's kind of new to me. Jurisdictions are supposed to also be doing education outreach. And so I would hope that that would be getting the message out, but I don't know, do you have any specific suggestions for us?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't I hadn't considered that. I guess I do kind of have a follow-up question. If we were working
Mhm.
with a school and wanted to suggest that they try and find a fellow to help, which I think is such an awesome program and a good idea. I wonder who we would reach out to in the school to suggest that, and like who might, be responsible for applying for that fellow.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I think your contacts that you're working with at the school might be a good person to
Right.
ask. I think typically it's probably going to be at the school district level. So kind of whoever's in charge of the, recycling food recovery efforts, if there is someone. But I think just if you want, we can follow up and give you our contacts and the information we have about the process for applying for fellow. The next round would happen probably next spring for the following year. So that would be the timeline, but happy to follow up if you give us your contact info.
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat, and I would appreciate a follow-up with that.
Yeah, sounds good. And did you have any suggestions for us? Do you feel like we need to do some new outreach to school districts to inform them requirements, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough one. Without knowing too much about like the internal networks at schools, I don't really have a suggestion for who would be the best person to take on that role. I have noticed that working with the nutrition director is probably the person that you want to be working with, because she is, or the person that I'm working with anyways, is in control of, what's going on at all the schools in the district. It's just finding capacity for that person. So I think it's really the district recognizing the need and, kind of responding accordingly. And I'm not really sure what that looks like.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think for Mallory and Michelle, let's strategize. And we've worked collaboratively with CDE on reaching out to the food nutrition services directors and to school districts, to the superintendent. So it's probably time for us to do another outreach, and probably to some of the statewide associations. So we'll talk about that and do some strategizing. Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, I appreciate everything, your feedback and everything. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
All right, and just a reminder to please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. It makes it much easier for CalRecycle staff to stay on top of them and make sure we address all the questions that we need to address. If you type them in the chat, we are unlikely to get to them, unfortunately, but you're always welcome to submit questions to the SLCP inbox, which is listed on the screen here. Up next, I have a question from Jacqueline Dedmore. Jacqueline, if you could please unmute, state your name and affiliation, and then ask your question. That'd be great. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Dedmore. I work for a school district. I'm the food service director, and I wasn't able to attend part one, so I'm coming into part two, and I'm trying to understand, are we required as a school district to do both a share table and food donations, or can we just do a share table? And if we don't have enough organic waste for recovery, I guess, for a food rescue, is this something we're being required to do, or is a share table good enough?
Thank you,
That's,
Jacqueline. Go ahead.
yeah, I'll start. Yeah, Jacqueline, great questions. So, I mean, the answer is it depends. So if you have edible food that could be recovered, should be recovered, and all of that could be managed through the share table, then you may not have any food that needs to be donated. Typically, we find that's not the case. That you do have food that needs to be donated, and that is a requirement that that the school district has an agreement with a food recovery organization or service. So similar to the presentation we just had from Fresno Ministries. So Fresno Unified, has that agreement with Fresno Ministries, and they've developed that program to recover that edible food, get it collected and redistributed. So we'd be happy to do a follow-up with you, talk more about kind of what the resources are in your area, and provide some assistance, and maybe see what we can do to move things along if you'd like.
Yes, I need all the guidance that I can get on this, because we do a lot of scratch cooking in our district, and it's things like maybe, the ends of a cucumber or something, like things that could be donated to either our ag department within our school district for, pigs or whatever, or a local pig farmer. And then leftovers are reused if possible the next day or in the after school program. So we have very minimal waste, and food recovery is maybe, 10 sandwiches or something. Like, we don't have a lot, so we try to manage it within our own capacity. So I want to make sure I'm following the rules, but I don't know what's going to be expected of myself and our staff, and we're already short-staffed as it is. So if they're expecting to be spending extra time sorting things, I'm not sure how to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And where's your district located? I think I missed that.
Oroville.
Okay, great. Let us set up a follow-up if you provide your contact information in the Q&A, and we'll do some follow-up. You could have edible food that still needs to be recovered, but let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, up next, I have a question from Sam Irwin. Sam, if you could please go ahead and unmute, state your name and affiliation, and then ask your question.
Hi there, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for confirming, Catherine. So my name's Sam Irwin. I work with HF&H Consultants, and we're working with some jurisdictions on their edible food recovery projects. And I had two parts to my question. It sounds like first part was if a share table could be sufficient, and it sounds like it might be case specific though. And then the second piece of that is, if the share table is sufficient to capture the excess food, what kind of evidence do we need to have to share with CalRecycle or our the regulatory jurisdiction to prove that?
Yeah, that's Sam, thank you for that question. I think that the proof piece is when the jurisdiction conducts an inspection of the school district. It would be that conversation, the school district explaining, what they do, what's recovered at those share tables, why there isn't other, edible food that needs to be recovered. So I think there's no reporting by the school districts to CalRecycle. So it would be keeping those records, that information, and then when the inspection happens, conveying that to the local jurisdiction.
Thank you for that response. And a quick follow-up then. For the share table, does the school need to keep records on what's going into the share table?
No. And Danielle, I don't know if you're on, if you want to talk a little bit more to what you've seen with share tables, or anyone else with our panelists, but no, technically that food that's recovered or shared at the share table is really kind of what we consider before needing to be recovered by a food recovery organization or service. So records are not necessary, although I think when the inspection happens, the school district explaining what they do at their share tables, maybe even showing, what's happening at the share tables would be really helpful to paint that picture. But records would not be kept. The records that are needed are when the food is donated to a food recovery organization or service. Danielle, is there anything else you want to add?
Sure. I think you covered it pretty well. There are no record keeping requirements for share tables, but it could be a best management practice or just some way that the school can feel that it can adequately demonstrate when they have their inspection, the program, like Kara mentioned, just show how that food is flowing and the fact that it's not leaving excess that would then need to be donated.
Right. Can I add something from a school district perspective? We are actually logging our leftover foods from the share table on our travel sheets as leftovers. Like there's a line for recovered food, and so those travel sheets that go back and forth between the central kitchen and the school. So that's actually a way that you could also log that, because it is technically food that's going back on your line the next day.
Cassidy, that's a great suggestion. And that would be exactly, Cassidy, if I was the jurisdiction coming to Upland to do my inspection, that's the kind of thing that would help me to know that actually the reason that food didn't need to be donated is that was put back into, what did you call it? Production?
Yeah, it just goes back on the line if it's
on the line.
So yeah, apples, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think that would be a perfect way to communicate what's going on. Yeah, great suggestion.
Thanks so much, Cassidy. We'll be hearing from Cassidy more. She'll be one of our presenters. But at this point, we're going to pause with our Q&A so that we can hear from our next two presenters, and we'll have an opportunity to ask more questions at the end. So next up, I would like to introduce Joanna Doubledam. Joanna is a sustainability consultant who serves as the part-time director of sustainability at the San Diego Jewish Academy in Southern California. And under her leadership, the school has exceeded the requirements of SB 1383, earning recognition as a model school for their edible food recovery program. Joanna?
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for including me in today's conversation. And thank you to CalRecycle for all the amazing resources and support that you provide to schools. My name is Joanna Doubledam. I'm engaged part-time as a director of sustainability. I oversee the administrative, programmatic, and operational aspects relating to sustainability with an emphasis on fostering collaboration on campus. The part-time nature of this engagement allows the school to conserve financial resources while targeting the strategic priorities of their sustainability initiative. I'm happy to share last year's sustainability report with the group that outlines some key achievements that may inspire other initiatives. Excuse me. Also in the works, my company is developing an online tool for schools to better manage their waste, assist with diversion efforts, and help with the SB 1383 record keeping requirements. And I'm also working with the Center for Green Schools to create a peer network specifically for independent school sustainability leaders. For anyone that isn't familiar with the Center for Green Schools, they work to support school district decision makers through education, advocacy, and research. The goal of this new group is to create a space where independent school sustainability professionals can collaborate, learn, and support each other. Anyone interested in any of these things, feel free to reach out. There'll be a link in the chat to request additional info, and I will also have contact information at the end of the presentation. So today I'll be discussing how the San Diego Jewish Academy, which I also refer to as SDJA or the Jewish Academy, deals with the organic waste on campus with an emphasis on their edible food recovery program. The Jewish Academy is an independent K-12 Jewish day school located in San Diego. It operates 3 schools on campus from preschool till high school. In addition to the great education and community that the SEJ offers, they offer a Camp Carmel Creek, which allows campers to choose their own tracks and build their own summer adventures. The campus is 56 acres. It's quite large, which creates some operational challenges for programs like this, and it encompasses multiple distinctive buildings. At the center is a 5,000 square foot garden, which is a beautiful space for the students and staff. Next slide, please. So the school has a really great food service program that's run by a third-party dining service provider named Sage Dining. The school provides free lunch to staff and students, feeding 750 people a day. It is a kosher facility. The slide shows a satellite image of part of the school's 56-acre campus to give you a sense of its scale and complicated logistics around the food service program. As you can see on this map, there is a central kitchen that's noted in green that is kosher, that serves all 3 dining areas around campus in purple dots. For those of you that don't know, a kosher facility is one that complies with Jewish dietary laws known as kashrut, and these laws govern what foods can be consumed and how they must be prepared and handled. Next slide, please. So with food service that's feeding 750 people a day comes waste. And in the case of the school, there's a lot of it. The school generates around 10,000 pounds of organic waste per month. In terms of generation source, the kitchen generates most of the waste through the storage waste, which refers to the waste generated from improper storage or items that have expired or spoiled. There is, of course, production waste, which arises from food preparation, including trimmings and peels and other byproducts. There's service waste, which encompasses the waste generated during the service, and of course, leftovers. There is some organic waste generated by the students and staff. Most of it is generated in the lunch dining areas. We use cardboard, dishware, compostable cutlery, which goes directly into an organics dumpster at the location of the dining program, which you can see in some of these photos, and that's taken away by an outside hauler. There's some organic waste generated in the staff lounges, which we capture. And outside of these 2 areas, the school does not have organics collection. There's no food allowed in the classrooms, but there is organic waste generated around campus, but not very much. There's a 2-bin system of waste and recycling around campus. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we're addressing all this organic waste, I know most of you have probably seen this graph before. I use the EPA's food recovery hierarchy as the approach to deal with the food waste at school. When I talk to students about organics, and actually even speaking to staff, they immediately think of composting as a solution and are always surprised to know how far down the pyramid is. CalRecycle has amazing resources on the website. I've shared a couple links on that can help with all of these different programs that I'm outlining here. And I will be discussing source reduction strategies later on in the presentation. So currently the school has 3 ongoing programs, which started in February of this year. The first is the food recovery program, which will be the focus of this presentation. We are diverting about 900 pounds of edible food each month, which is being donated to Jewish Family Services. The food is distributed to unsheltered San Diegans living out of their vehicles through Jewish Family Services Safe Parking Program. Secondly, we have organics disposal, which is taken away by an outside hauler. We use EDCO. We're generating about 2,500 pounds a month. Students place the organic waste from lunch, as I mentioned, into the dumpster located in the dining area. Being in California, we're very lucky that it can be outdoors. And it is hauled away twice a week and processed into biofuel at a local anaerobic digester. Other metrics to mention around the organics disposal at mealtime. There's a lot of opportunity for operational efficiencies. In one of the dining areas, there used to be 9 trash bins that facilities had to empty and of course deal with the waste around them. Now it's down to 1 trash bin. So it's a huge time savings for our facility staff. One thing to note though as a tip is that if there are any trash bins or any containers around the dining area, the students will find a way to put something in them. So it's best just to be really deliberate where the receptacles are placed. The third program for organics diversion is the animal feed recycling program, which I heard a couple of the people mentioning on this call. In our case, we're diverting the most through this program, and this is the waste generated in the kitchen. It's about 5,000 pounds a month. It's non-meat discards and eatable leftovers. They're separated and they're turned into animal feed by local farmers. And we also have chickens on campus. So we also feed the chickens with some of that organic leftovers. Each program has its own challenges, but today I'm going to focus on the food recovery program. So let's get into that. Next slide, please. So the creation of SB 1383 is very admirable. I really feel lucky to live in a state that sets goals to reduce greenhouse gases and address food insecurity. I'm actually originally from Canada. It's alarming to hear that 1 in 5 Californians are food insecure, but the good news is that the solution is in our reach. Another great thing about SB 1383 is that focus on organics diversion is now required. And there's just so much positive environmental impact we can make just in this one area. In terms of a business case for schools that are not already doing this, I hope that you'll be reassured to know that at San Diego Jewish Academy, there was no cost to set this up. There's no cost to run the program. And once it's set up, it runs fairly seamlessly. And it also didn't take a lot of time to set up. I set up all 3 organics programs on a part-time basis in a couple of months, while also working on other initiatives, excuse me. And as I said, CalRecycle has great resources to guide schools through this process. So these are the steps that we took to set up the edible food recovery program at Jewish Academy. It's important to evaluate the waste to see what we actually generated. I know one of the questions, there's no waste generated in one of those kitchens, which is amazing. In our case, the waste generated probably because of the kosher nature of the kitchen, which I'll go into more detail about that later. So evaluating the waste generation, identifying sort of the typical surplus foods and understanding the frequency. Then the next thing was to select the right food recovery partner. We used the San Diego Food Bank has a fresh rescue program where they match schools with recipient donors and they coordinate all the logistics around this and send donation receipts as part of the SB 1383 record keeping compliance. Our letter of agreement is with the San Diego Food Bank, which they send that to us directly. And as I mentioned, the recipient donor is Jewish Family Services, who picks up the food from the school weekly and distributes it to those in need. Now, the next step, really, once the donor recipient is selected, it's important to optimize the pickup schedule and logistics. For example, Fridays work best for the Jewish Academy because the kitchen switches from a meat to a dairy kitchen every Monday. And so any leftover food cannot be transported to the other kitchen. Also, optimizing the pickup schedule can help with barriers like fridge limitations. In the kitchen at the Jewish Academy, there's 2 fridge storage. And during the week, there's very little that's kept in the fridge. Most of it is used for other cooking through their scratch cooking program, but there is some storage there. But if there is small fridge storage on site, then having more frequent pickups will prevent the need for having so much storage. The key, and that's why this image of people is on this slide, for this program and implementing it is really the effective communication, ensuring that everyone is informed and equipped with all the information. There's a long list of stakeholders at this school in order to execute this program. We have the outside suppliers like the Food Recovery Agency, the recipient donor, their drivers. We have a school security, one at each gate. And from the overview map, there's 2 gates, 2 entrance points to the school. We have the third-party food service provider and all of their staff, our school's facilities team, the students, the admin. So really the people are behind the program and the key to its success. So this communication piece is also so important to establish the clear procedures and training, and really setting up the procedures for the food recovery. As I said, it's not a lot of extra work. It's part of now the procedure for Fridays, which I'll go into in the next slide, I believe. But getting staff compliance is, sometimes challenging, but there's many ways that we've worked on to deal with this in terms of rewards or encouraging collaboration, other incentives, waste audits, and a lot of this has been done through training. Having designated people for specific jobs really helps. We have the chef and food services director that decides what gets reused and donated because they have the broadest knowledge of the menu and are in charge of the forecasting. There's a couple of staff that deal with the waste each day. And of course, there's lots of things you can do to help with that in terms of signage and etc. The next thing is really to celebrate the successes and provide relatable metrics. Sharing these achievements and really celebrating small changes makes a difference. I mean, these are people that are making this program happen and finding things that they can relate to and praising their efforts is really really helpful. And then utilizing these efforts, these organic diversion things as an educational opportunity. I started with the infrastructure of the program and then worked to create educational tie-ins around that, which I will mention a little later. Next slide, please. So I thought it might be helpful to go over the actual procedure that the kitchen uses for their Friday food recovery pickup. The first thing that's done with the furthest 2 locations, dining service locations, both of those are indoor. The recoverable food is covered and placed on a cart, and the unrecoverable organic waste goes into a bus tub that's sealed. Anything for the chickens goes into the blue bin and is taken to the garden. Then it's transported to the main kitchen. So the 2 furthest dining locations consolidate their pans, drive them to the kitchen, and the recoverable food is put immediately into the fridge. For disposal, the non-meat organics are put in the animal feed recycling bins, which are taken away weekly. Any meat organics are put in the organics dumpster. And right before the driver comes, the food is sorted and arranged in pans nicely. If you'll see, this is actually a photo of the food that was picked up on Friday from the school. The chefs use different leftover items to decorate, leftover lettuce. A lot of the items that are donated weekly are, from the salad bar, cold storage sandwich. But this one little extra step is nice, remembering that someone is going to be receiving this food and eating it. The items are taken out of the fridge, and then a driver comes at the same time every week. They pick up all the food to be donated and load it in the truck, and then it's delivered to the safe parking program and served immediately. I know that there's been some mention of the food safety challenges after the 4-hour temperature danger zone. The food cannot be recovered. So there is a tight window to do all the clearing in transit, which the kitchen works around. And food is only allowed to pass that temperature danger zone twice if it's colder than 40 degrees or hotter than 140. So that affects definitely soups, which typically are a transport issue. They are already made from leftovers from the scratch cooking. So they go to the animals and are not recovered. And another challenge that the kitchen staff struggle with is that manufacturers just send so much packaging. They reuse it when they can. The 5-gallon buckets or smaller pails that they use on the stations come from actual food that's been delivered to the school. So they're reusing and upcycling, but it is something that we all maybe can work to try to get less of. It's a lot. Next slide, please. So just in terms of what we're doing right now at the school, we're really focusing on source reduction now that the program's running so well. Back of house is where a lot of this can occur through efficiencies with the purchasing. As I said, the chef and food services director plan and decide what gets reused and donated. And so they plan for, you know, cold vegetables and fruit that can be used in other items. A lot of the time, the salad bar items are used in frittatas or soups the next day, which is a great advantage of the scratch cooking. You know, burgers that aren't used, you know, or go into stews, stuff like that. But to really get a sense of the surplus, they use logs. Right now they're paper logs. They just started doing this. They fill them out manually, which tracks menu item, the cost, the standard portion size, the forecasted production, actual production, and leftovers. We are actually, in terms of an educational tie-in, we're looking at ways to automate this process. Also, these logs do not capture the source of the waste, which I think is an important piece. The Jewish Academy has an Ideas to Products course offered through the School Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurial Thinking. And so we're going to be having the students be looking at AI solutions for smart trash in the kitchen that will track food costs and waste sources. In the front of house portioning, students are self-serve on the salad bar and the sandwich bar, and the fruit stations, the hot food is served and portioned. So portioning their own food as it relates to cut fruit really has an implication on the food waste and food costs. So some of that is as easy as, you know, keeping the size of the bowls a little smaller, and having signage or having, you know, student monitors, you know, talking to their peers about it. We are also moving to reusable cutlery. One of the resources I'm sharing is a company that provides subsidies for schools to do this, which is fantastic. But the best way to do all this source reduction is to work with the students and staff and get the community involvement and encouraging student champions, creating leadership opportunities. We're really focused on connecting the students, connecting action to impact. You know, students and community members will be volunteering at the donor site at the Jewish Family Services Food Bank. This will hopefully connect students to what the school is doing and the impacts that they can make at home. We also have educational tie-ins through garden education time and morning meetings in the classroom. A powerful tool that worked really nicely for the older kids was we did personal waste audits, which was a really interesting project. I'm happy to share resources on that with the older kids and with the younger students, learning about what waste is and where the food actually comes from and its life cycle. The EPA has amazing lesson plans and teacher guides and resources on this, which are also on the link that is being shared. But we really want to connect the students with reasons to care, but at the core, it's instilling and nurturing a love and respect for nature. So next slide, please. So ultimately, as I mentioned a couple of times, this is all about people. It's about effective communications and connection building. And really finding ways for individuals to connect with what they're doing in their actions. So, you know, recognizing that people also have good intentions, but may lack knowledge or awareness. Sometimes that can be, you know, a little frustrating when people don't understand or don't comply with the signage, et cetera. But we've really found that the people do have good intentions and just need education and training. And we're in a position that we can do that as educators. It's important really to make these systems easy and to get collaboration. And training and education really are crucial for behavior change. So using relatable examples and equivalents to convey the importance is also key, and celebrating those achievements. But I'll end with this, you know, making sustainability fun, easy, and guilt-free is the approach we take to inspire lasting change. Next slide, please. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and a special thank you to CalRecycle for including me in this vital conversation. As educators, we really hold a unique power to create lasting impacts, and I feel honored to play a part in shaping the next generation of change makers and really appreciate everything everyone on this call is doing at their schools. So let's collaborate, and I really wish everyone best of luck with their programs. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Joanna. All right, up next, we have our final panelists. Cassidy has been with Upland Unified School District for the past 5 years with the Farm to School program. And her background in sustainability and passion for the environment helps her to problem solve her school district's journey to SB 1383 compliance. Thank you, Cassidy.
Thank you, Mallory, and thank you to CalRecycle and Joanna. I'll definitely be reaching out to you for some of those resources. I think the personal waste audit is just absolutely, like you mentioned, very powerful tool. So thank you so much again. My name is Cassidy. I'm the Farm to School Program Manager with Upland Unified School District, specifically housed within nutrition services. So just using that as a lens as I go forward with some of the stuff we've been able to do as part of our plan for SB 1383 compliance. Next slide, please. Okay, so first, just a background of what is Farm to School in Upland Unified. For us, Farm to School looks like having a garden and garden club in every school, increasing our local farmer connections and local produce procurement, increasing our sustainable practices and researching sustainable practices in our classroom and lunchrooms, as well as providing nutrition education to students through programs like Food Corps, Garden Club, and it is our first year with Climate Action Corps Fellows. And so we're really excited to see how that project can go as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first, I want to talk today about our school waste audits. That is really what started our conversation with SB 1383 compliance. Basically, what we realized is that our district didn't really have a plan in place yet. And as nutrition services, we obviously should be the ones to start that conversation. But we really had no frame of reference of how much trash we were producing. We had no idea just what we were looking at and what we were going to have to sort or recover, or what that would look like. So with the help of a couple of nonprofits, as well as our own Farm to School staff, we started to perform waste audits. And some of the benefits that we've seen of that so far is estimating the size of the waste problem, understanding the specifics of the waste problem, engaging and educating students and the entire school community, increasing awareness of the impacts of the waste, developing a waste reduction strategy, and measuring progress to reduce waste. Next slide, please. Okay, so how was our waste audit? What was the process for that? So before the audit, we really want to make sure that we're first looking at the way that the lunchroom works and looking at the way that the lunch service operates, so that we know kind of that we're going about this the best way, as well as staying out of everyone's way and not really, we didn't want to affect the students' behavior. So if we stood there with a couple bins and we're like, oh, let's put your waste in here, your food waste in here, then we're affecting their behavior. And it's not really going to be a true waste audit. So we basically just put a different liner. We actually used purple trash bags for a lunch service, and the kids didn't really, I mean, they noticed that the trash bags were purple, but they didn't know what we were doing. So it was very much so a normal behavior day for them during lunch service. The first waste audit we did was in a high school, and we had 93 trash cans. So being able to observe the lunch period for the couple weeks up to that point also really helped to see where are the trash cans. Let's build a map. And then which trash cans are we maybe going to need to observe a little bit closer? Are they getting dumped during lunchtime? Is custodian maybe switching out the trash cans so that we can talk with them? And we ended up working with the custodian and letting them know, if you do dump trash during lunchtime, please bring us those trash bags. So we got our audit team, and then we also determined from the observations, we were able to determine what categories are we going to break our waste down into. So for our first waste audit, which I'll get to in a little bit, we ended up choosing, I think, about 31 categories to break the waste down into. We've since pared that down just to make it a little bit more realistic for our team. But for the first one, I think it was good for us to really get into all the trash and really get into seeing what we were seeing. So for the audit day, again, we set up our audit stations. Those are kind of behind the scenes, and the audit doesn't actually start until lunch service ends. We collected the waste at the end of lunch service. We did have the opportunity to interview students, but that was more the students, the high school students that were helping us with the waste audit. So I think going forward, we would do some of that maybe on the back end. Maybe once we have the results of the audit to see what the students think about the amount of waste that was produced. Also, then we go to sort the waste into the containers, weigh and count waste items, record data, and obviously clean up. And then after the audit, we're able to enter data into a spreadsheet or database, analyze the data, create a summary report, and then schedule follow-up audits after we maybe make some changes, as well as preparing presentations for the board or for relevant departments. Next slide, please. So our first waste audit was at the high school. The really cool thing about this waste audit was it was completely student-led. So what happened was during the 2021 school year, 2022 school year, my apologies. I had a student that was in garden club. She was a senior. She had been in garden club with us for 4 years. And she shared with me that she was taking food waste from the share cart home and composting it. That she felt like food wasn't getting into the share cart, or it was maybe being left on a table around the share bin. And then she had actually seen it being thrown in the trash. So she was composting at home with the food waste. So it really brought to our attention that even if we do have these systems in place, like a share cart or a share table, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but if you don't have a share table at your site, the kids will just start to make one. We have a couple of sites where kids are just putting apples on a table without actually having a share table in place yet. So we decided to go into the planning stages of this. So we used, like I mentioned, we worked with our farm to school team, our grow team at the high school, which is the gardening, recycling, and organizing change club at our high school. And there's some pictures of them up there. And then we also worked with a local nonprofit, Community Composting for Green Spaces. So we did the waste audit. We organized 90 trash cans into 31 categories. It took about 6 hours. There were about 8 or 9 of us out there consistently. It was really powerful to have the high schoolers out there because A, they were seniors, so they're going out into the world, and then B, like this is their school. So they're like recognizing how much waste is actually being thrown out. So we ended up collecting 348 total pounds of waste during one lunch period. This is a high school of about 3,000 students. It's our only high school in the district, and it's a 40-minute lunch period. So 350 pounds of total waste. That would be 62,000 pounds of waste per year, of which 67% was compostable. So 67% of it was some sort of food waste, whether that was recoverable because it was whole food, or it was just food waste because somebody didn't finish their sandwich. You can also see some additional information on there. So obviously food was just leaps and bounds above aluminum, glass, paper, or plastic. And then also the partially uneaten food was partially eaten food was very high. We also logged how much whole fruit was uneaten, and that was about 50 pounds of whole fruit. So if you think about that, so the whole fruit, and I'll talk about the share carts in a minute, but whole fruit is very easily shared and either shared in that lunch period if it doesn't have an edible peel, or washed for the next day if it does have an edible peel, like apples or plums. So that's 50 pounds a day of food just in produce that we were throwing out. Next slide, please. So our second kind of big waste audit in that within that year was at the junior high. So we wanted to see kind of like what we could expect from a much smaller school. So the junior high has, I might be wrong, I'm going to guess around 1,000 students, if not a little bit more. So this is about a third of the kids. But we still collected about 250 pounds of waste. You can see the total waste composition, 80% was compostable. Within the food waste, whole fruit and veggies was 32%. In fact, at the junior high, we collected 250 whole pieces of fruit in one lunch period. So that's over 1,200 pieces of fruit per week that is just getting thrown out, and that could absolutely be immediately reused or immediately recovered. We also recovered about 19 pounds of cartons of unopened milk, or I'm sorry, 19% of the food waste was unopened milk. So there's two things that we're really looking for in the waste audit in terms of how can we use this information going forward. So what we're really interested in is A, what's getting thrown out, and then B, what of the food waste from what comes from the cafeteria is getting thrown out. So we all know that like milk has been kind of an issue with food waste in the past because students are kind of confused on whether they have to take it, and maybe staff is confused as well. But also the produce we were really surprised about because you know, it's an apple. So I figured at least kids would try it, but it's just going directly into the trash. So we really wanted to know why that was happening. And then we also wanted to know, one of the things we were expecting this to tell us is if we find 50 burritos in the trash out with one bite taken out of them, maybe that's not a popular lunch item. So we're hoping to try to use that to give our nutrition services team some information. Next slide, please. So then we moved down to the elementary school. And for the elementary, we actually wanted to look at the breakfast. One of the reasons we did breakfast waste audit is because at the elementary level, because of our menu, there are more items that can actually be recovered or shared during breakfast versus lunch. And that's just because we have more individually wrapped items. But you'll see that we actually ended up having some issues with that as well. So we did 2 breakfast waste audits at 2 separate schools. For the elementary school, we did 2 separate models. The first model was that the students actually gave us their trash at the end of the lunch period instead of throwing it out, or breakfast period rather. That was interesting. It changed student behavior in that they were much more like almost not embarrassed, but it was almost like, oh, well, I didn't eat my apple, or, oh, well, I didn't eat my muffin. And so it was like, that's okay if you're full and you don't want it, just go ahead and give it to us. We're going to sort it. And we were kind of able to let them know what we were doing. That was actually a K-8 STEM school. So we're able to see all grade levels there, which was great. So we recovered 6 pounds of edible food. During the lunch or the breakfast period, there were 34.2 pounds of waste, 327 non-food items, which that includes the wrappers. We really got into a lot of like the individually wrapped items too, because again, we were doing these waste audits to give our nutrition services some feedback on what we can immediately change. The second model was the same idea, but we actually did a meal preparation cafeteria waste audit. So what we did is we sat behind the kitchen, and when they went to take trash out from meal prep for that day, this is a central kitchen, we took that trash from them. So 15 pounds of waste was produced by the cafeteria during the meal preparation. And a lot of that you can tell is individually wrapped items. And so it's items that maybe come to us and they're individually wrapped, or items that come bulk individually wrapped. Next slide, please. And oftentimes the stuff that's individually wrapped, that is not a recyclable wrapping. They're really thin plastic. So what did our nutrition services do, and what are we kind of like working towards now? First, we decided that kind of playing off of the EPA hierarchy of food recovery, we wanted to prioritize like better school meals. So why are kids taking one bite out of their food and throwing it out? Because they want different school meals. So first, we're working on recipe development and new menu items. What can we get onto the salad bar? What can we get into the cafeteria that's going to entice the students more to want to eat at school? Next, we're rolling out share carts. We started to do this at about 5 sites. We're rolling out the next 5 sites by the end of the month, as well as the junior high and high school. Share carts come with some contingencies. I know I was kind of responding to some questions in the Q&A, and then also seeing some stuff in the chat. So there are some items you can't share during lunch period. So for example, the edible fruit or fruit with an edible peel. If a student touches that and puts it on the share cart, we don't want another student picking that up. So we actually started to make like 2 separate bins on top of our share cart, like a share now, which is like your crackers, cheese sticks in the iced part. These share carts, by the way, are from Hubert. They come with the stickers and everything. They're really cute, and it really like is very kid friendly. Milk, all that stuff the kids can take. But then we also have another bin that is like wash for later, and that's like your fruit that has an edible peel. So we're still working out the kinks. It's not perfect. It's been really hard. And somebody did mention in the chat or the Q&A, so how do you just like make sure that the kids aren't throwing things in the share cart that we shouldn't? We also don't allow food from home, for example. So it's really just building it into your schedule, into your kitchen staff schedule to check on it. And that's something that we're working on too. But also something that we did before we piloted the share carts is that we promised our cafeteria staff support for at least a couple weeks. So whether it was me every day at lunch period, or an intern, or our climate action corps, or our food corps, somebody that can be with that share cart to kind of help work out some of those problems right off the bat. Again, we're planning more waste audits. We want to do a waste audit at least every site and at least every lunch period, just so that we can kind of identify some of the things that we can do. We are transitioning to more sustainable items like pasture raised and organic beef, biodegradable packaging. And then of course we do have that garden in every school. So we're trying to get more garden fresh produce and more organic farm fresh produce onto the salad bar, because then the produce tastes better. And hopefully we don't have that situation where it's getting thrown out before it's even tasted. Next slide, please. So some opportunities that we've seen come out of this for K through 12 SB 1383 education are lessons in our gardens on nutrient cycling, composting, soil building, lessons in our classrooms, nutrition, wellness, the local economy, sustainability, what is important about food recovery and what are the implications of all of that in our cafeterias. So letting the students help with waste audits, developing green teams is something we're working on this year. Joanna mentioned having like a student, you know, on the salad bar, like reminding students that, you know, how much is the proper amount of food to take, or maybe, you know, you can come back, but not taking so much in the beginning. And then also in our community. So we have to remember that at home, parents or families at home are also expected to adhere to SB 1383, like working with our community, figuring out where your city is, where your waste management is, because the students are going to go home and teach their parents, but parents are going to teach their students at home as well. So we're really trying to like pace ourselves with our community and our city as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we moving into for the next school year? First, we are implementing share carts and share tables in every school. This is an actual real life example of our share cart from the very first day we rolled it out. We haven't had share carts since before COVID, and the kids were like immediately knew exactly what to do. Again, I think that kids are really used to swapping food during lunch anyways, or maybe sharing things that they don't want, or looking for things that they do want from other students. So we had a lot of milk get in there, yogurts, at breakfast, we do like a lot of sliced apples and packaging muffins. Again, those are things that can be shared and right during the same lunch period. We're also working on student and staff education. We just switched waste companies. So actually, I was going to mention before, if you're looking for training for your staff, look at your waste company. So our new waste management, American Reclamation, is actually going to offer training to our staff. So they want you to be as successful with this as they do, because the more sorting and the better we get at that now, the less they have to do on their end, right? More waste audits, and then also increase sustainable lunchroom practices. So bulk milk, bulk condiments, washing cups, washing trays, washing sporks, you know, hard plastic or metal sporks that can be rewashed and reused. We're really trying to pilot this at different sites so that it's not just across the district. All of a sudden we have 15 new changes in our cafeterias. We're really trying to go piece by piece so that we can really support everyone along the way. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let us know. Again, my name is Cassidy, and then my Director of Nutrition Services is Ksenia Glenn. She can really help on the side of like getting into some of that sustainable lunchroom And then, as I mentioned, trying to really increase our recipes and increase the student voice and choice and taste testing as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cassidy. Well, that includes our presentations for today. We have a couple minutes to address some more questions. Katie?
Yep. All right. So since we are a little low on time, I'm going to prioritize questions that are addressed to our panelists today, since we only have them here to answer questions for a limited amount of time. Questions that are for CalRecycle can be sent to the SLCP inbox, slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. All right. First up, I have a question from Ciara Lowe. It's addressed to Vu Veng about hot food donations. Ciara, if you could go ahead and unmute, state your name and affiliation, and ask your question, that would be great.
Hi, yep. Kira Lowe with the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. And I had a question for Vu Veng about the hot food donations and whether, you know, you were saying you're trying to pick it up hot foods in the 4-hour window. And so I'm curious if you're cooling it down or if that food is being served to students, picked up by you, delivered to a distribution site and reserved to folks within that 4-hour window, or if you can just clarify how you're dealing with hot foods, that would be great, because I know that's a really difficult item to recover. And then also, is the food aggregated, or do you pick it up from each individual school site? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the great question. So the food are being picked up at each site. And what we work with this kitchen staff that they will leave the food in the warmer until our driver picks up the food and put it in our hot bags or in their igloo to keep it warm at temperature until we deliver. While transporting to our delivery locations. From there, so how we schedule it is that we schedule each of the school food delivery according to the need of the organizations who are passing out the food. So let's say if an organization is serving a homeless shelter, or they're taking the food to, on the street to feed the homeless. And really it's just, we coordinate the delivery according to each of their need. So the food will arrive at our receiver, and then they'll unload into the igloo and they'll take it to the street to share right away, or if it's delivered to a location where the residents are living there, like we have our senior locations where we drop off the food there, and as soon as we drop off, everybody picks it up. And so that's how we had to handle those hot meals, because within the 4-hour window. So we do designate a time just within that time right after where the food is being served to the student. And then from there, they keep the food in the warmer until our driver gets there and gets the food. And so that's how we're able to run. And now it's Monday to Friday that we do this. And every day it's scheduled to a different partners. We actually have about 48 partners that we work with on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. And everything is scheduled, coordinated according to their needs. So that's how those food are handled. I hope that helps a little bit of clearing on how we transport and trying to stay within that window. So the time designated for that window, we don't pick up anything else but those food.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Vu. Up next, I have a question from Ruben Hernandez. Ruben, if you could please go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation, and then ask your question.
Yeah, hi, thank you for taking my question. I was just for any of the panelists, I wanted to know who are they sending this edible food surplus to? Who are the main recipients, and what's the selection process to select those recipients? Thank you.
Could I actually answer that and then also pose a question to the rest of the group as well? One of the things we're looking at is trying to donate the food back to our own support services department so that it actually goes back to our families within the district. So I actually am kind of answering your question with a question. I apologize, but I'm wondering if anybody else has experience with that, because we would really love to. Our support services already holds meals, you know, a food donation, and they have a food pantry and they have places families can come pick up food. So how can we get the food from the cafeteria just going straight back to our support services and our families?
So yeah, great question, Ruben and Cassidy. That's also an amazing thought. What it makes me think about, and I think it probably just depends on where you live in the jurisdiction, but for San Diego, the food rescue organizations, they have a list of the organizations that are most in need, and they do that matching for you. In our case, there are directories and lists, you know, that you can arrange directly, but I believe there's many different food rescue organizations that will do the matching for you, so you don't have to deal with that as a school. Perhaps, Cassidy, if your community got onto that list somehow in some way, I believe there's restrictions around like tax stuff, but maybe that would be a way to do it. But Ruben, it may seem like a lot to have to make that call, but there's a lot of great organizations out there that do it for us, so we don't have to.
Thank you so much. I'm with Marine Sanitary Service, by the way. I forgot to state my affiliation. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us know. All right. Let's see. Up next. Let's go with Jennifer Razzo. Jennifer, I think the second question that you had might be more for CalRecycle, so I'm going to ask you to please follow up with that via email with the SLCP inbox. And oh, it looks like Jennifer has actually left the chat. All right. I am going to go ahead and move on to Tiffany Farnsworth. Tiffany, if you could please go ahead and unmute and state your name and affiliation, and then ask your question for us.
Thank you. My name is Tiffany Farnsworth. I'm with the Solana Beach School District in San Diego. My question was related to the food tables or food carts that students have. I missed the very beginning when we were discussing that aspect. And we've had shareable food in the past for the students, but as we're trying to meet the requirements for SB 1383 and just use any excess food wisely, I was wondering if it is acceptable to food share back to staff. It sort of is in line with what Cassidy was saying. Did my question make sense?
Danielle, Cassie, I'll let you go first, and then I'll have Danielle.
Was just going to say I don't have the total answer, but I will say that I think my understanding is that anything bought with school dollars should needs to go back to the students.
Thanks, Cassidy. Danielle, do you want to add? And I know you've put some feedback in the Q&A.
Yeah, I think that this one goes back to some other questions that I've answered regarding USDA provided meals. But this one hasn't come up before. And so it's something that I would want to double check with CDE on, since you're talking about staff and not just members of the community outside of the school. So this is one I can follow up on.
Okay, thank you so much. Should I email you or put my email in the chat?
That would be great if you could put your email in the chat, and I will take it down and follow up with you.
Okay, thank you, Danielle.
Katie, did we have any more questions? We have 2 more minutes if we want to do one more question.
Sorry. Okay. Let's go with Paul Freund. Your first question, please, Paul. Give me just a second to find you in my list of participants. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Please state your name and affiliation and ask your question.
Great, thank you. Paul Freund with Tehama County. So this is about private schools. So I really appreciate the San Diego Jewish Academy sharing their experiences. But as a private school, they wouldn't actually, depending on that definition. So we have a couple private schools in our area. This came up. Fortunately for us, they don't have an on-site food facility. Well, I guess that would kind of change the language because they're not considered local education agencies, but would be considered commercial businesses. So it's just more clarification on whether, maybe if other schools or jurisdictions on the webinar have any other experience with that in their jurisdictions, how they define them. And then again, if they don't fit those specific definitions within the tier 1 or tier 2, really, as far as large venue and restaurant square footages or seating, then essentially they wouldn't even fit in within edible food donation, correct?
CalRecycle should definitely answer that first part of the question. But thank you, Paul. Yeah, it is different for independent and private schools. What I would say, though, regardless of the classification, it is a great thing to do anyway. And as I mentioned in my presentation, there's no cost to it. And of course, just there's only upside as far as I can see of the benefit it will play. In terms of the compliance issue, that's something that I'll leave to CalRecycle. But if you ever want to chat about it from an independent school perspective, feel free to connect.
Definitely, thank you, Joanna. Yeah, and in San Diego, it's definitely a particular case where you have lots of resources available. Far rural Northern California is not in that same boat, unfortunately. So California is not as homogenous as San Diego has wonderful programs, that's for sure. So it may not cost really anything for you, but in this area it could.
Right, that's
more of a burden.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, fortunately, like I said, we don't have any in our area, but I know other jurisdictions may be dealing with that. And I think this is, opportunity for peer share and, other collaboration too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. So we are at about time. So Paul, if you could go ahead and include your contact information in the chat, we'd love to follow up with you. So I just want to remind folks that we do have these SB 1383 chats with CalRecycle every single month. In October, we have 2 this month. So on the 18th, between 1 and 3, we have our chat on enforcement. And please sign up with our listserv, either for the schools listserv and also for the SLCP listserv, because that's where we'll be sharing information about these chats. If you are signed up with that listserv, you will receive an announcement when this recording becomes available so that you can take a look at that. We also have links for our local education agencies. I put the link in our chat, but here's where you can find all of our great resources. And in closing, CalRecycle will be going through the chat and Q&A to follow up where needed on the questions that we weren't able to answer. But make sure that you include your contact information so that we can get a hold of you. The best way to do that is to go ahead and email the slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov inbox so that we can go ahead and respond and make sure that we can follow up with you. And I just want to thank our presenters today for sharing their awesome programs with us and being available to everyone to peer share. Thank you everyone for attending today, and that concludes our webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.